I feel like I've been going like a chicken with his head cut off for 2 weeks, and I just can't seem to catch up. So I remembered I've got Awana games tonight, so we'll go through. I even set my alarm, so I have to be done. So anyway, we'll get through it. We'll do it. So Mark 15, this is a very, very serious passage. And as I studied through this, you kind of get overwhelmed with the subject matter. I don't know about you, but when somebody passes away that you're close to, that you know, whether you know it or not, it affects you. And I think sometimes when we get into studying about Jesus, the same thing happens. And it can give you just kind of a feeling of sadness. And it affects, it can affect the way you feel in the moment. And I think some of that happens as well as we look at this. And very sad to see how Jesus was treated. And we'll pick up our reading in verse 16. Let's go back to 15. Jesus has just gone through these trials. He's been turned over to Pilate. Pilate's questioning what evil has he done? And they cried out, "More, crucify him." Verse 15, so Pilate, willing to content the people, playing the politician, released Barabbas unto them and delivered Jesus, when he had scourged him, to be crucified. So here's Jesus. He goes through 39 lashings, one shy of 40, to the point of almost death. In verse 16, and the soldiers, after he's scourged, led him away into the hall called Praetorium, and they called together the whole band. So let's gain a little perspective here. The Praetorium is the structure that Herod the Great had built. It was his palace area. When the Roman leaders would come into town, what they would do is they would take over this complex because they were more important than Herod. And so they would come in, and so Pilate dwelt in this area. So they took him into the hall, this outer area of the Praetorium, which is Herod's dwelling place, this palace opposite the temple in Jerusalem. And so this is where, to give you the perspective, this is where Jesus was led. And here, it says in verse 16, and they called together the whole band, that is 600 soldiers. And they clothed him with purple and plaited a crown of thorns and put it about his head, and began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews." And they smote him on the head with a reed and did spit upon him, and bowing their knees worshipped him. When they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him and put his own clothes on him and led him out to crucify him. And they compel one Simon, a Cyrenian, who passed by, coming out of the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to bear his cross. And they bring him unto the place Golgotha, which is, being interpreted, the place of a skull. And they gave him to drink wine mingled with myrrh, but he received it not. And when they had crucified him, they parted his garments, casting lots upon them what every man should take. And it was the third hour, and they crucified him. And the superscription of his accusation was written over, "The King of the Jews." And with him they crucified two thieves, the one on his right hand, the other on his left. And the scripture was fulfilled, which saith, "And he was numbered with the transgressors." I'd like you to just jump down to verse 32. It says, "Let Christ, the King of Israel, descend now from the cross, that we may see and believe. And they that were crucified with him reviled him." So tonight we're looking at the punishment found in Mark 15, 16 to 28. I want you to put yourself into the audience, the original audience. The audience are people from Rome. So these are Romans, they're Roman citizens, and they're reading this document, this information. and it's information about this one called Jesus. And you just went through and you read all about Jesus, the different things that he did, how he fed 5,000 and 4,000, how he walked on the water, how he was awakened from sleep in a boat where the water was just crashing all around. He was in the stern of the boat. He wakes up, he calls out, "Peace be still," and the waters are calmed. He had entered into an area after getting out of the ship, out of his boat. He was met by a demon-possessed man. This demon-possessed man had a legion of demons in him. And they feared, and they came and worshiped before Jesus, and Jesus cast out the demons. And they went into swine and rushed into the sea and plunged to their death. You have all these different amazing accounts of what Jesus did. So you're reading all this information. Now you get to the point in Mark 15 where a governor, a Roman governor, has given in to the pressure from these Jewish people. He has turned this Jesus man over, a man who's done way more amazing things than the one that we call God, the Romans, and that's Caesar. And they turn him over, and he doesn't do anything. Instead, he gets beaten and whipped and has this crown placed upon his head. He has a purple robe thrown onto his open wounds in his back. And then they take him, they spit on him, they take a reed and they hit him over the head with it on the crown of thorns. And then they remove the purple and put a cross on him and direct him to carry it, which he can't do. Instead, they have to take another man. So here is this man. He's completely humiliated. And this is the man you're reading about. And what are you thinking as you read verses 16 to 20 here? You're a Roman, and we're looking at the humiliation of Jesus. That's what, as I read these verses, what I see is the humiliation of the Son of God. And it's so ironic, or it's so paradoxical, right? This is a paradox. Here is the one who has been worshiped, and here he is being with a mocked time of worship, and he's completely humiliated. And this is why Jesus came, to be humiliated and to pay for our debt. And so here you have this humiliation, and we have verses 16 to 20 in Mark's account here, where the soldiers led him away into the hall. They called together the whole band, all 600 of them. They clothed him with purple, platted a crown of thorns, put it on his head, began to salute him, "Hail, King of the Jews." They smote him on the head with the reed, spit on him, bowed down and worship him. And when they had mocked him, they took off the purple from him and put clothes on him and led him out to crucify him. So how might verses 16 to 20 affect the Roman reader? How is that going to affect the Roman reader? Let's take that side first. As you read this, I just kind of walked you through the whole thing. They just read the first, 13 chapters especially about all that Jesus did. And now how does this information affect the Roman reader, do you think? Any idea? That's a tough question, I think. You just put yourself in their shoes. I'm reading this. Yeah, Ron? Okay, great question. If he is who he says he is, because there are many indications, right, that say he is the Son of God, why doesn't he do something about it? Good. Yeah, that is probably a thought that's going through their mind. Yeah, what else? Is there anything else that we've read that they may go back to and say anything about? Yes. Good, yeah. This seems like overkill, right? I mean, look at it says here the accusation is hung above his head. And what is the accusation? King of the Jews? I mean, that's why this guy's getting killed. Seems like an overreaction, right? The other guys have robbers or rebels, over theirs probably, but he has King of the Jews. They're looking at that saying, wow, that's why we kill people. Yeah. Okay. Isn't that fascinating? Why did they need a whole band of soldiers? Why do they need 600 soldiers? I think that would enter into their minds. Good. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he hadn't broken any Roman law, so why is he being crucified? Great, yeah, these are all things that might enter into their minds, and this is causing them to think about Jesus in a different way, in a different light, right? So you're going through this whole thing, and you're saying, wow, this is really cool, all this stuff about this Jesus guy. He didn't really do anything wrong, but he's getting crucified for it. Why do they need 600 soldiers? If this guy is so weak and frail, I mean, it just doesn't really make that much sense. Except for Pilate wanted to be careful, make sure there's no uprising, so maybe that entered their mind. But yeah. Yes?
So I don't feel like this is something I can really relate to, but reading about slavery or, things in our prior culture where people really look down on other classes as trash. Hard to imagine, at least for me.
Sure.
But I feel like you inserted yourself into this culture, and I think the Romans looked at the Jews as kind of like the lowest of the low. So it didn't matter if you were good, bad, didn't matter. Maybe you could equate that to black and white or something more recent, but that's kind of the sense that I get. It just didn't matter. They just hated these people. They treated them like dirt. They didn't care.
Yeah, they were conquered people, right? So they're not Romans, so they're not important. They're just conquered.
And now they had a great reason to, spit on them and, oh, you think you're going to take over? Oh, yeah, sure, whatever.
Okay, yeah, look, we'll show you, right, how important you are. King of the Jews, yeah. And so there's that perspective as well. Yeah, definitely. I think a Roman maybe, because Mark is writing to them, may look at the 3 different times when Jesus spoke to his disciples and said, I'm going to be crucified. And after 3 days, I'm going to rise again. They may have hearkened back to that. Wait a minute, I remember that being said, and then it happened. Here it is. So that could be part of it as well. How about a Jewish reader? How might they respond to this? Because you're going to have Jewish readers, of course, that are coming across this information, reading it for the first time, because Mark probably wrote this pretty early on. For many, when it was in circulation, that was the first gospel that they read. So how might a Jewish reader respond?
I think most Jewish readers probably would have, if they were to read Old Testament, they would have thought that Christ was going to be king and overcome Rome. And he didn't do that. So when he was on the cross and they said, come down, some of them might have expected he would come down if he was Christ and rule.
Especially.
Understand was.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I mean, they're looking and saying, they assume that, after reading the Old Testament, what Todd was saying here is that he's supposed to dominate the Romans, come down or not even get to that point and lead the whole world. And that didn't happen. And even some, while he was on the cross, may have thought that he's going to come down and he'll rescue us then. But he didn't, right? Because that wasn't God's plan, as we'll look at a little bit later on here. Yeah, I think a Jewish reader is going to have mixed emotions. They're going to say, yeah, see, we told you so. He's not the Messiah. Other people have come in and they've done these great things. I think you're going to have others who are sympathetic, who are saying, we really thought he was the Messiah. I mean, look at everything he did. We saw him in action. I was a recipient of his healing, maybe. You know, he healed. I was just going through it again. How many scores and scores of people. They would just bring people to Jesus. He'd come from being out with his disciples and from the water. And they would show up. There he is. And they'd run into town and they'd grab the sick people and they'd bring them to him. And Jesus would heal them. I think this was a pretty dramatic time. I think this would produce a lot of thinking. Yes. Well, they're also under Rome, so they could be accused of something outside of Roman law, and then they didn't want to be. Yeah. It was probably at this point in time, probably limited as far as their stoning. You know, like for instance, in our culture today, I was just talking to Brad Scott. He said he remembers when he was in school here that he was asked, this is a great story, I don't know if I should tell it. It's a great story. He was asked by a teacher, did you write on so-and-so's shirt during such and such class? He said, no, I didn't. The teacher looked him right in the eye and said, did you write on so-and-so's shirt in such and such class? He said, no. He said, I'm going to ask you one more time. You tell me the truth. Did you write on so-and-so's shirt during this class? And he said, no, I wrote on it in this class. And he said he got the paddle for it. And I said, well, what grade were you in? He said, I don't know, like 8th grade. 8th grade? I said, boy, that would solve a lot of issues today, wouldn't it, if we could pull out the paddle? I just bring that up because what was acceptable, 45, 50 years ago, today, boy, we'd be stoned for that. So I think there was a change in even the way that they did things, in their orthodoxy, how they followed the word. But no, it's a very good question. Yeah. Yes, they were. Yeah. No, I think women, though, when you talk about classes, they were treated differently, and that's where when Jesus came along, he was totally different than others. He treated everybody, just everybody has the same need, right? Yeah, Clark?
Just to add to that, in that situation, they caught the person in the act. Where's the man at?
Yeah, that's true. Where's the man? He's caught in the act too, right? Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Was there another hand? Yes.
I don't think the Jewish religious people appreciated the sign on the cross, the King of
Right.
the Jews, because even in John it says it should be written. He said, "I am the King of the Jews."
Correct.
Not like that.
And Pilate responded, hey, at least Pilate did get a little bit of a backbone because he's saying, well, I killed the guy, probably. He said, it is what it is. That's my paraphrase. It is what it is. That's going to stay. Yeah, Mike?
Well, when you first asked the question, what do you think the Jews thought? My first thought was, I worked in a Jewish nursing home and hospital in Milwaukee, where they were Jewish Orthodox.
Hmm.
Okay, and I know what they thought because I was able to talk with them, not very much, but a little bit. Their reading is he got what he deserved.
So, yeah.
And they want nothing to do with the New Testament whatsoever. But they have read it because they spoke very boldly about it.
Yeah, so that goes along with that, stoning. They didn't get to stone him, but he got crucified, right? And in their minds, he got justice. Justice was served for that. Yep.
Well, if you remember, they did try to stone him. Maybe they decided stoning didn't work here.
Yeah. They did try to stone him. He did get away, didn't he? That's true. Good. Yeah. Great input here. Yes. Yeah, because here's right, that's true, because here's the Sanhedrin, right? The Supreme Court who would interpret the law. Why would they say that unless it has to do with the Romans being over them, we don't have the right to do that. You do, so you take care of it. Yeah.
Well, basically, yeah, that's how it is. Romans had the power to put someone to death. The Jews didn't. You say, well, what about the woman? Well, I don't know if they were actually planning on killing her. I think they just wanted to trap Jesus. When it comes to Stephen, I think that was a thoughtless mob approach response. They were extremely mad at Stephen. They didn't care about authority at that point, and we all know that sometimes the mob just does what it does without thinking. And so in that case, they didn't have the authority to kill Stephen. They did it anyways.
That's true. Yep, mob rule. Just like here, right? They're the ones that called out, crucify him. Wouldn't let Pilate speak reason. Instead, they just kept saying, crucify him. And Jesus was crucified. Yes.
They had also already involved the Roman government because they couldn't catch Jesus except when there was a crowd around, and so they had to get the Roman government involved in order to capture him. So that they may have felt, trapped. We've got to go by the Roman method since we've had to involve them to start with.
Sure, following the Roman rule. Yep, very true. Yeah. Good, great insights. Yes.
Jesus healed hundreds of people. Where were all these people at this time? I would have thought they would have been there standing up for him with some backbone or something, but they kill him. Of course, I know it was planned before his crucifixion.
Yeah, Gerald brings up a good question. He healed hundreds. Where are these people to stand up for him? That's a fair and it's a good question, right? I mean, we could even say that less than a week before, a lot of people were standing there welcoming him in. Hosanna to the king, right? They're welcoming Jesus in as king. And then a few days later, he's taken and he's scourged and then crucified. It's a good question. A lot of those people, though, that were healed, as we study, those people were healed in Galilee. So everybody was supposed to make the pilgrimage down to Jerusalem. Did they? That's the question. Probably not, at this time of the year. But yeah, very good question. You started off pretty slow tonight. I was wondering if I was just going to have to go through this, but yeah. Did you all hear that? He said all those people that didn't stand up, they probably went to Joel Osteen's church. We won't say who said it. It looks like I said it. I don't think Kevin put the camera on, did he? He did. That's awesome. All right, we got through one slide. No, we didn't. We didn't get through one. We got through one point. Okay. Why do you think the whole band, it sounds like they're going touring or something, right? Why do you think the whole band was called together in verse 16? I think I kind of answered that. I think fear of an uprising was probably the main reason that they were called together. It's probably a joke for them too. Like, why are all 600 of us here with this one guy? This doesn't make any sense. Well, let's make the best of it. Let's put purple on him, spit on him, put a crown on him, beat it, show him that he's nothing. I think a lot of that was going on here. You can't even see the bottom of that. There's more to it. What was the point of what the soldiers did in verse 17 and 18? Yeah, it's not there. 17 and 18. It was humiliation. We'll get back to the rest of this next time. This is now we've done one slide out of 7. So I really didn't think that would happen, but there's a lot here, as you can see, and we'll get to the rest of it, Lord willing, next week. If you go back through this week, and I would encourage you to do so, look at all the prophecies that are involved here. They're a big part of this. where you look back to what was said in the Old Testament. All that's brought up, and that's for the Jew. The Jewish person would then see that and say, oh, like on the road to Emmaus, when Jesus is just explaining all the different things, and their eyes are open. Wow, he just told us all this stuff, and then he vanishes. It was pretty remarkable. So hone in on the prophecies. I think that you'll find them to be a blessing for sure. All right, let's turn our attention to the prayer request sheet. Any praises or good news that you have tonight? Yes. Yes, the Coles have a grandbaby. The baby, he was born.